Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show. I am your host, Dr. Will, and I am here today with my very first guest on the Dr. Will Show, Dana Aris. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Quite well. Thanks for asking. And for those of you who are watching this show, we have a special topic. It's very interesting, something that uh, I have never approached. And so we're going to see how this goes. Now, so for the folks who are watching and are wondering who you are, Dana, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a grade six educator. I teach grade six at Greystone Centennial Middle School in Spruce Grove, Alberta, Canada, which is just about 15 minutes outside of Edmonton, Alberta. I've taught in multiple elementary schools before. This year, the past 2 years, it's been in middle school. I have experience in the corporate world as well, which I left to pursue education. But education is my passion. So that is me.
Awesome, awesome. So, folks, I forgot to bring up the topic. So, we'll be talking about lean in. Okay, so for those of you who are not aware, there's a book by Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook and sort of took the world by storm. And I saw Dana was reading it and making some tweets about it. And I said, hey, let's come on the show and talk about it. So here we are. So let's start by explaining the point of lean in.
When I had first heard about the book, I didn't know much about it, and then I started reading up about it. And my main interpretation and the point behind what I believe Sheryl Sandberg had written the book for was being a leader and a woman leader in the corporate world. For her, she saw a lot of discrepancies between leadership positions for women versus leadership positions for men. And through her own experiences, she had done a TED Talk, which was a huge hit, just about the leadership risks that she had taken in her career. And the response to that was overwhelming. So she realized that she had a story to tell, and that was a story for a lot of women in the working world today and in leadership positions around the world. So this is what this book focuses about. It's her personal experiences, but it speaks to a lot of the issues that women currently face in the working world today.
Okay, so what attracted you to lean in, and what spoke to you as an educator?
The very first thing that drew me into this book at the time, I had wanted to start pursuing my master's. I had thought about doing my principalship at some point, and I had just started reading a lot of different articles on Twitter about leadership. And I had always been that child growing up that was called bossy, which is a huge topic in Cheryl's book, where instead of being called bossy, being called a leader would have probably been a lot more appropriate. I'd always had leadership positions, not leadership positions that I have sought out, but that have somehow just through my own, I guess, my own work and my own career have just landed to me. And I've always kind of hesitated. And so when I had read this book and heard about it, it really spoke to me because I had experienced some of the things that I had read about in this book. And I just wanted to see what her thoughts were as a woman leader. There's a lot in this book that spoke to my educational practices and the practices, not just for me as an educator, but for my practices in the classroom, especially when I'm teaching with middle school children, girls and boys who are very impressionable at this age. It made me question my own practice and reflect on how I am treating boys and girls maybe differently without even knowing it.
Hmm. So in the book, she talks about success and likability. What are your thoughts on the career opportunities for women in education? And do you think women in education face the same criticisms for women in the corporate world? And have you ever been rebuffed or someone made a comment to you about your own ambitions?
It's a very interesting topic that she spoke about in her book. She says that men who are successful are also liked. However, women who are successful are rarely liked. So it's a interesting dichotomy that she talks about between likability and success. There's a difference between being likable, because women, according to Cheryl, strive to be likable, but in doing that, they try to cater to everybody around them. And when they cater to everybody around them, they take their own needs as last. Whereas, according to Sandberg, men tend to focus on the success, and the more successful a man is, the more likable he becomes. And that is opposite of what it is for women. In the second part of your question there,
Like, do you think women face the same criticisms in education as they do in the corporate world?
um, I think it's actually, speaking to from where I was in the corporate world to where I am in education. Um, I find it even more difficult in the educational world than it is in the corporate world. In education, especially in elementary education, um, leadership roles are more, it's not a ladder. And I know that's a topic we're going to talk about next. I'm just going to lead into that. In the corporate world, you tend to see rising and leadership positions as a ladder. So it's the next step up and you grow up. In education, it doesn't work that way, as I've noticed. And if you are a teacher, you are a leader. If you are a teacher and you're sharing what you're doing, you are leading. And that's something that most teachers are not very comfortable doing. And I've also noticed too, women in general find it difficult to share without feeling like we're boasting or trying to show off. And I think in the corporate world, from my own experiences, and I worked in a male-dominated industry, and I was a female at the age of 26 at the time, I felt like there was a lot more leeway for me to move around in different areas, where in education, there doesn't tend to be a lot of males in elementary education. You'll find more male teachers as you get older into the older grades, so middle school, high school, and post-secondary. And that, I think, would needs to change.
Mm. So, how do you see Sandberg's point on career risks and the jungle gym to be relevant to the experiences of women in K through 12 education?
Well, she talks about how the career, nobody's career is going to go in a ladder. Everybody's career is a jungle gym. There are ups, there are downs, there are sideways, you can hang up upside down. Things in life will happen. And you can't just go from one position to the next. So even in education, you may start off as a teacher, but you may stay as a teacher. And that is okay. And that's awesome if that's where you want to be. And you're a leader, you have those leadership skills as a teacher. It doesn't necessarily mean that you must go from teacher to vice principal to superintendent. Those don't really exist. I think jungle gyms is what she means by jungle gym is by taking those risks and trying out different positions. And if they don't work and you have to go back, but that's how life works. But if you don't take those risks, you tend to just stay on the ladder, the rung that you're on. And I really truly believe that is relevant for everybody in K-12 education, men and women alike. You may have different skills, you may have different abilities. Maybe, I've taught grades 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 already, and I'm in my 6th year of teaching. I would be more than willing to try high school. If there are careers that come up in education, like for Alberta education with the province, I'd be more than willing to try that if that fits in. But it's about taking those risks and knowing that you may not succeed, but you're going to learn along the way, and to just not be afraid.
Hmm. Now, as a co-founder of BU EDU, I fully support people embracing their truth. Did you know yours before you read the book? If not, what was your process for discovering yours?
I can honestly say when I started reading this book, I was in the process of trying to discover my truth. I don't know that I'm there 100%, but I know I'm a lot stronger now than I was when I first started reading it. This book really resonated with me, and in the area of self-confidence and in being able to recognize your own strengths and not being afraid to shy away from the things that you are good at, to be confident, to speak up, to know that if in your heart of hearts that something is right or something is wrong and that something you need to advocate for, you need to be brave enough to go and do it. In this book too, there was lots of moments where in my life outside of this book, I would think about those things. There was one time at a conference I was walking by and I saw two male educators with a male presenter sitting and having coffee. And I, if I hadn't read this book, I would have looked at them and just walked away. After reading this book, as I walked past them, I thought to myself, I really want to meet that presenter. He resonates to me on Twitter. I want to go and speak with him. And so I said, you know what, I'm taking this risk. I turned back around and I walked in and I introduced myself to all three of them and I sat and had coffee with them. So it's about being confident in who you are and knowing what you're capable of and what your abilities are, and knowing that if you do fail, you will learn from those failures.
So, and this is something that I don't even know if Sandberg even sort of thought this would even happen, or even in her mind go, oh, I'm going to put out this book and this is some of the feedback that I'm going to get. But she's gotten her book has received criticism for not reflecting the realities of the experiences of women of color. What are your thoughts?
I know for her, when she wrote this book, she wrote it from her perspective. And so you have to take that with a grain of salt. I don't believe that there's any type of book that's going to cover the spectrum of women in general. And there won't ever be any book that's going to cover the realities that many women across our world face and the different realities that we all face. From her perspective, she is a white woman who's married as well. So I don't believe that it also relates to the realities of single parents, whether of color or not of color. And I'm a visible minority, and I have been in all the schools that I've taught in. I believe that brings in a different perspective on your teaching, different experiences, and it's a positive thing to have. And I know that there are lots of different issues that many women deal with, and those weren't really in the book. And I do agree with the fact that there was lots of experiences she did not touch on, but then again, those aren't her experiences. And so I believe somebody reading this book expecting to get an answer for all women needs to kind of just take it for what it is, as one woman's experience and one woman's thoughts.
Mm-hmm. So, and this, I'm going to take you back because you talked about you may have not approached those guys, and you said, "Hey, I want to meet this presenter." So now I'm going to do this. I had coffee. From your travels and your conversations on Twitter or personal conversations you've had with teachers, do you think women in K through 12 education deal with the invisible barrier of not feeling good enough and thus won't apply for certain positions?
Yes. And that's speaking from experience. And that would have been me before reading this book, because there was one area in this book that really resonated with me. And that was when women apply for jobs, they base it on, am I qualified for this position at this moment? Whereas according to Sandberg, men apply for positions and say, I'll learn along the way. And that was a frame of thought that I had not even thought of. I'm capable of learning different things. I'm capable of learning on the go if need be, because I have the skills. However, I would not have applied for positions unless I felt I was 100% capable of doing them. And that goes back to the taking risks and learning. Every journey that we take is a learning journey. And if you approach things knowing everything, you're not going to learn. And so for that, there is an invisible barrier of feeling not good enough. And that's something that we need to tackle internally, each and every one of us, and knowing what skills we have bringing to the table, regardless of what the position is. And if it's something that we are passionate about and we feel we have the skills for, then we need to take those risks and apply. And there was lots of positions. I had just switched districts 2 years ago, and that's when I had started reading the book, and I actually ended up coming back to reading it. And there were positions where I applied to, and I, wondered, am I good enough for this? And thinking about it now, Some of them I applied to thinking I can do this, so I'm going to learn while I do it. And so, as long as we have that growth mindset going in and the self confidence that we will learn through anything, any job that comes our way, and that's the stance that women do need to take, not to take it personally, not to feel like they're going to come in 100% competent into every position, because there's no such thing as perfect. So, yeah.
Okay. Uh, do you have in the books you mentions a lean in circle? Do you have a lean in circle, and would you consider Twitter a part of that circle?
Yes and yes. I have a big lean in circle outside of Twitter, and those that consists of a few educators, some administrators that have become mentors along the way, as well as my Twitter colleagues too. And I also have in my lean in circle people outside of the education world. So I truly believe in order to be a leader or in order to be well rounded in any position, the people in your circle need to also be well rounded, so that I get feedback on everything that I do career wise and life wise from people with different backgrounds. And I can't even stress the importance of that. Just to have that support from different careers, different outlooks, and different types of feedback coming in. Twitter has been phenomenal for that too. My Canadian EdChat friends from all across Canada, we have our own conversations outside of that, and we are our own support for each other. And my circles actually include women and men, because I believe, for women equality, we need to have the voices of men and women on the same page.
Mm. So before we leave, I want to uh, get your thoughts on, like, for those who they're hearing this conversation, or they're at a bookstore and they see the book, or maybe they run across her TED Talk and they're like, okay, this is cool, but I'm not really quite sold on reading Lead In. What is your elevator pitch to them?
If you want to know where your next step is in your career, if you want to find out more about yourself, if you want to gain some self-confidence and do some self-reflection on where you are career-wise, life-wise, I would highly recommend you read this book. It will change your perspective on how you view things, how your communication styles with opposite members, colleagues, other leaders within your work career or outside, even within your own family and your family dynamics. It has changed my view on how I view myself as an educator, and it has also helped me to assist with my own students in my classroom so that they too have a fair view on life.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much, Dana, for being on the show and sharing your thoughts on the book. Uh, Folks, as always, this will be on my blog. And now the Dr. Will Show is on SoundCloud as well. So once again, folks, thank you for watching the Dr. Will Show. And as always, be you, edu.
Thank you.
Peace.